Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here today, because we are tackling a game that has literally captivated human minds for centuries: chess. It's a game of infinite possibilities, but at the exact same time, it is entirely bound by this sprawling, sometimes completely bewildering set of rules, so today we're demystifying that rulebook. Whether you're setting up the board for the very first time, or you're a seasoned player wondering what actually happens when someone accidentally makes an illegal move in a major tournament, well, we are breaking the whole shebang down for you right now. Okay, let's dive right into this. Here is our game plan for today. First up, basic setup and movements. 2, special moves and maneuvers. 3, winning, losing, and draws. 4, over-the-board tournament etiquette. And finally, 5, penalties and edge cases.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1. Basic setup and movements. Getting started on the board.
White moves first. It's pretty much the very first thing you learn in the chess world. But why? Well, a lot of people actually mistakenly believe this has some sort of modern, controversial origin, but it really doesn't. Historically speaking, there's this fascinating theory that back when the game of chess was first being refined, playing as black was actually considered lucky. Crazy, right? And because of this perceived luck, white had to be given some sort of other advantage just to balance the scales. And that advantage simply became the first move.
Now, let's do a really quick roll call to summarize the distinct movements of every single piece on the board. Pawns basically march one square forward, but they capture diagonally, though they do get a fun little 2-square burst on their very first move. Knights are always taking L's, hopping in those totally unique L shapes. Bishops slice diagonally across the board, while rooks lock down the horizontals and verticals. The queen, she's your absolute powerhouse, combining the moves of both the rook and the bishop. And finally, the king, the most important piece of all, moves just one delicate square at a time in any touching direction.
Moving right along to Section 2, special moves and maneuvers. These are your secret weapons.
First up is en passant. Okay, this is a highly specific special capture that happens when a pawn leaps 2 squares on its very first move, landing right smack next to an enemy pawn. That enemy pawn can then magically capture it diagonally, almost as if it had only moved 1 square. Honestly, this is the one rule in chess that, if the position allows for it, players want to play it even more than actually getting a checkmate. It just feels so incredibly satisfying to pull off.
Next up, we have castling. This is a brilliant defensive maneuver that lets your king hide in a secure spot while simultaneously bringing your rook out to play. But there are very strict physical mechanics you have to follow here. Step 1. You absolutely must touch the king first. This is super crucial because of what's called the touch move rule. If you reach out and touch your rook first, you are legally forced to move that rook, and your chance to castle is totally ruined. So, touch the king, move it 2 squares, place the rook next to it, and, here's the kicker, you must do all of this using the exact same hand.
But hold on. As powerful as castling is, there are some vital restrictions. You absolutely cannot castle if your king is currently in check. It just doesn't work as an illegal escape route. Furthermore, you cannot castle if there are any pieces blocking the path between the king and the rook, or if any of the squares the king actually has to cross over are currently under attack by an enemy piece.
All right, on to Section 3, winning, losing, and draws. Let's talk about how it all ends.
You know, there is a razor-thin line in this game between ultimate victory and pure agony. On one hand, you have checkmate. The king is in check, has absolutely no legal squares to move to, and no piece can block or capture the threat. Boom, you win. But then you have stalemate. The player has absolutely no legal moves left to play, but their king is not currently in check. The game immediately ends in a draw. Let me tell you, grinding away for an hour only to accidentally stalemate your opponent, it is easily the most frustrating thing you will ever experience playing this game.
But hey, stalemate isn't the only way to draw. There's actually a rapid-fire list of incredibly specific board conditions that result in a tie. We have insufficient material, which is where neither side has the pieces required to actually force a checkmate. There's a dead position, where all the pawns are hopelessly locked up and literally no progress can be made. Threefold repetition, which is an automatic draw if the exact same board position occurs 3 times. And finally, claiming a draw on time. This stops an opponent from just making random, pointless moves when you are heavily down on the clock but physically can't be checkmated.
Then there is this magical number, 50. The 50-move rule states that a player can optionally claim a draw if exactly 50 moves have passed without a single pawn being pushed and without a single capture being made. If neither of those things happens, you can just step in and say, okay, look, we're getting nowhere here, let's just call it a draw. But the key word there is optional. You can totally choose to just keep on playing. But what happens if you just ignore that 50 move mark? Well, that brings us to 75. After 75 moves without a capture or a pawn move, the choice is taken out of your hands entirely. At that point, the game transitions into an absolutely forced draw for both sides. It's completely decided by the rules, no matter how badly someone wants to keep trying to grind out a win.
Okay, Section 4. Over-the-board tournament etiquette. Behaving like a pro.
Over-the-board chess is incredibly formal. Players actually have to follow a strict European business casual dress code. Clothes cannot be distracting, your shoes literally matter, and absolutely no hats are allowed, unless it's for religious reasons. You also have to uphold extreme fair play. To guarantee this, arbiters make sure nobody is carrying any electronic communication tools, or, as our source playfully but very seriously points out, vibrating devices used to cheat. Oh, and of course, absolutely no takebacks allowed. If you make a stupid move in a high-level tournament, you just have to live with it.
Imagine just for a second hearing a ridiculous quote like, "Come at me, man, I'll beat you up," right in the middle of a serious chess match. I mean, it sounds like something out of a bad high school movie, right? Well, this stands in harsh contrast with the absolute reality of tournament chess, which enforces a strict no-talking rule. During a match, no words can be spoken other than offering a draw, saying check, or one other very specific phrase. Trash talk like this, strictly prohibited.
And here is that one specific acceptable phrase, j'adoube, which translates from French to I adjust. Remember that strict touch move rule we talked about? Well, if a piece isn't quite centered on its square and you just want to fix it, you can't just reach out and touch it or you're going to be forced to play it. Saying j'adoube acts as your verbal safety net. It announces to your opponent and the arbiter that you are touching the piece only to adjust it, which keeps you totally safe from any penalties.
And speaking of those physical rules, there are obsessive one-hand requirements when it comes to things like a pawn promotion. Step 1, you push the pawn to the final rank. Step 2, you remove the pawn and place your new piece down. And a fun little fact from the source here, if you don't happen to have a spare queen lying around, you actually use an upside-down rook. Then, step 3, you hit the clock. The absolute critical rule here is that you must do all of these steps using the exact same hand. It just maintains fairness and a steady flow on the clock.
And finally, Section 5, penalties and bizarre edge cases. What happens when things actually go wrong? Let's see how this all builds up in a real tournament setting. Say you make an illegal move, like, I don't know, accidentally moving a bishop like a knight, and your opponent calls you out. The arbiter steps in. For your very first offense, you get a stern warning, and your opponent is usually gifted some extra time on their clock. But if you make a second illegal move in that exact same game, you lose immediately. It is a severe, rapidly escalating penalty designed to keep the game completely pure.
But you know, even the rules can get tangled up sometimes, as we see in this fascinating edge case from 2017 involving none other than Magnus Carlsen. An opponent made an illegal move, but instead of calling it out, Magnus just kept on playing. The arbiter initially stepped in and declared that Magnus actually lost for playing a move after an illegal move. It was this completely bizarre double illegal edge case. But as it turns out, that specific penalty isn't actually written anywhere in the official rulebook. The chief arbiter swiftly overruled the decision, the game continued, and Magnus ended up taking the win.
There are a few other quirky edge cases too. If the board starts with an incorrect setup, say the king and queen are accidentally swapped, it must be completely fixed before normal gameplay can resume. Also, historically, if a game went on way too long, players could take an adjournment. They'd basically pause the game to sleep and strategize for the next day. But thanks to modern chess engines and smartphones, letting players go home to analyze a paused game is literally impossible to police, so adjournments are totally obsolete today.
I want to leave you with a final piece of cheeky advice straight from our source material regarding resignation. Never surrender. Resignation is basically when you voluntarily end the game early because your position is completely hopeless. But as the source notes, even if you make a stupid move, and even if things look super grim, don't just hand them the win. Make them earn the checkmate. You truly never know when they might accidentally stumble into giving you a stalemate.
So we've covered the layout, the hidden maneuvers, the agonizing draws, and the incredibly strict tournament etiquette that keeps everyone in check. Now that you know the rules, everything from the sheer magic of en passant all the way to the necessity of European business casual, I have one final question for you. Are you finally ready to step up to the board and play? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope you take these strategies directly into your next match.